Welcome to Esoteric America, a podcast where we tour the strange, mystical, and esoteric pathways hidden beneath the surface of America. Join Mark, Tara, Roman, Chad, and a new local researcher each episode as we dive into our country's diverse regions, states, counties, cities, towns, neighborhoods, parks, etc., leaving no stone unturned as we unravel the occult knots that tie history, culture, religion, all in with fringe elements that you may not have realized were at play in your own backyard. On today's episode, we continue our exploration of Detroit, Michigan with friend and co-host Chad Stuemke. Enjoy the show. But anyways, here we are, Esoteric America, talking about something that used to be esoteric and now is sort of hit the mainstream, the alternative mainstream, legal cannabis. And today we're talking about, we're revisiting a state that's been legal. I think Michigan was the second state in the country to legalize or top first five? Because Ann Arbor, Michigan has been legal for a long time, like almost as long as California. But that's just on the municipal level, not the state level. So good topic to roll into this part 2 episode. Last episode, we left off with quite the cliffhanger. Chad brought us through Hart Plaza. He brought us through some of the ancient and more past history of Detroit and Michigan itself, and today we're going to be looking into the spookier aspects, as it is October now.
Well, I'm looking forward to that today, guys. We talked about a lot last week, but I saved a lot of the good stuff for today. So I'm excited about it. And yeah, Mark, Ann Arbor has been decriminalized. They weren't legalized, but they've been decriminalized for like 30 years or something crazy like that. They've had It's called hash bash. Yeah, so every year they've had hash bash. But the state itself went medically legal in 2008 and recreational legal, I'm going to say 15 or 16 or something like that.
Okay.
But yeah, man, it's saturated here. It's crazy, Like Romy's talking about corporations have taken over the market here. Some of us caregivers left, but it's a battle at this point with the big corporations, But
Marlboro bought
that said,
1,000 acres just up in Humboldt not too long ago. I was like, fucking Marlboro? You guys don't make enough money? For real?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All the big tobacco is going to come in real quick. They're just waiting for all these guys right now. Everybody's paying their licensing fees and just giving this money away. And I think in a couple of years, the feds are going to come in and shut it down. But right now, they're getting $100,000 licensing fees left and right. So they're just taking that money in. But like you said, a couple of years, Marlboro, they're coming for everybody. I think once it goes federal, everybody's going to get shut down, I think. We'll see how that goes. But
actually, as a money laundering
tricky market out there.
As a money laundering scheme, it would make sense if like the state, like the reason the feds aren't coming in is because the states are able to get people's license fees, which is insane.
Exactly.
And then once they get passed, then the feds get a little cut, the state gets a cut, the judge gets a cut, and for every farm sold. Wow. Anyways, let's get into some goodness, brother.
All right. Maybe we'll do just a brief recap if anyone missed last week's show. If you don't mind, I'm going to work on screen sharing in the meantime.
Yeah, share your screen, and people who missed last week's show, what the heck are you doing? Go back and listen to it. It's available on YouTube, Rockfin, or any podcast app. Listen to that one first so you can be totally in the know. But yeah, give us a quick little recap to jog the memories of those who were there for part one.
All right, so I'm sorry, I'm still working on screen sharing here. Having a little issue. Advanced portion of screen. There we go. Okay, I'm sorry about that. So yeah, last week we started off with some of the Native American history and the burying of the Native American legends and lore and symbolism, in particular the gateway symbolism, being buried with star forts from the American, the British, and the French. Several star forts buried the ancient mounds, literally, as well as a World's Fair came to town and buried the Great Mound, so to speak. And then we moved on to the mid-1800s when Thomas Jefferson's disciple, Augustus Woodward, came to town and started laying out the city streets in the form of a pentagram and pentagon symbolism everywhere. So we looked at some of the pentagram symbolism that may have been destined for the streets of Detroit. We moved from there to Campus Mars and all the Martian symbolism as well as pentagram symbolism that emerged there. Took a little journey from Campus Mars to Hart Plaza, where we spent a lot of time looking at the correlations and orientations that Esoteric Noguchi created, including the plaza being orientated to the Giza pyramids as well as the constellation of Orion. And briefly touched on, was this intentional or subconscious by Esoteric Noguchi? And we kind of left a cliffhanger at that, a lot of cool symbolism, but all this was done in the 70s, which brought us up to where we're going to start off today in the 2000s, which is 2001. And this was Detroit's tricentennial birthday. And I call this the emergence of the gates, because this is when the real gateway symbolism started to emerge here in the streets of Detroit. Like we talked about a lot of symbolism already, but this is where it really took off. So when I say this was the gateway vision, I mean literally. The mayor and governor came to Detroit and they were renovating the Detroit riverfront, and the name of this renovation was called the Gateway Vision. So they were doing some renovations around the Renaissance Center and Hart Plaza, and the first monument they put into place here at Hart Plaza right along the riverfront was a new monument called the Gateway to Freedom. And, you know, right in its title, the Gateway. And this was a monument to the Detroit Underground Railroad. This precise spot used to be the last stop on the Underground Railroad before slaves would cross the river into Canada for freedom. So pretty, you know, very significant, important monument. And I always point out, read the signs, because many times the signs will tell you exactly what they are. Once again, like I said, this is the gateway to freedom, and we're looking for gateway symbolism. Now, the Gateway to Freedom monument, this is the conductor you see pointing here in the sculpture, and he's pointing across the Detroit River. And on the opposite side of the river is actually a companion piece to this monument, and it's called the Tower of Freedom. So this is, you know, where the slaves would get across the river to their freedom. So he's another new monument. This wasn't even a new monument at Hart Plaza. They updated this. This is actually where the engine is for the Horse and Sun Fountain. This is where the engine that runs the water to the fountain is. But they decided they needed some security, and they put some cameras all around the top of this thing, and they built this new spiral staircase. And symbolically speaking, looking at it visually, this thing looks like the Tower of Babel. You know, easy comparison to the Gateway of the Gods. We're looking for possible gateway symbolism at Hart Plaza. And I like to point out the cameras around the top. You know, if we're symbolically talking about this thing, can we look at those as the watchers? You know, are those the watchers on top of the Tower of Babel? You know, and this is just speculating, but it fits in with everything else, you know. It fits. And we talked about the Horse and Sun Fountain last week, but for the Gateway Vision, they decided they would give it a new plaque. So they updated the fountain, and they gave the fountain a brand new plaque, which reads, "This is an engine of water at the
stacking it up, man,
to a great city." They stack it up, and I keep pointing this out. Read the signs, because it says it over and over again in the signs. And this is the same, you know, countrywide. I've noticed this. So once again, now we have another gateway reference. But the real gateway, the thing that drew me to the plaza in the first place and made me recognize all of this, was the transcending gateway. And this thing undeniably looks like a Stargate. And this was, as the governor said, a gift to the city of Detroit for their 301st birthday, their tricentennial celebration. And they had a contest. They always have contests, just like when Osamu Noguchi came down and won a contest. They had a contest. 120 artists came down here, and these two gentlemen won the commission. David Bowie here on the left, he made the Stargate-looking monument. And Sergio Degusi, made these green granite boulder stones that wrap around and through the center of the gateway on a Fibonacci spiral. And, you know, this is supposed to be a gear. You know, according to these artists, this is a gear protruding from the earth. This was a United Auto Workers monument. And it does look like a gear, but, you know, symbolically, with all this other gateway symbolism, to me, it reminds me of a Stargate. But I should point out real quick here, if you look at this building through the transcending Stargate, this is the One Woodward building. And this was done by a Japanese artist, Minoru Yamasaki. And this happened to be the template for the World Trade Centers. He built this first to make sure the blueprint and the structural engineering would hold up before he went to New York and built the World Trade Centers. Dude. So synchronistically, go for it, Romy.
What? Well, when did he build that model?
The building in Detroit was built in the 70s.
Okay.
It was either 60s or 70s. It was literally, I'm not sure when the World Trade Center was built. It was like 2 years before the trade centers were built. But synchronistically, what I like to point out is when you look through this transcending monument as they're building it in August and September of 2001, they're literally building a transcending monument that you look through at the template for the trade centers that are about to fall at the same time, you know? And, you know, I synchronicities, I don't know, man. It's like, it's out there in the universe. I don't know how to explain it. Yeah. Insane. Absolutely.
The symbolism with the 9/11 shit is, I mean, it's so deep, and we're obviously not going to get into that, but just you bringing this up, like, because from the get, you know, the tricentennial in 2001, and then you're going with the gateway symbolism, and there happens to be all this correlation and crossover that is just, it's really peeling my cat back. Interesting.
Yeah, and actually, and I don't know how to explain this part of it, but the tricentennial celebration part of it, what we're going to notice as we go through different places on this show is that a lot of these monuments and parks are either built on tricentennials or bicentennials. Think of the Nashville Mall we just looked at a couple episodes ago. That's the bicentennial mall. And it's the same scenario over and over. A lot of these really important parks and sculptures, something about these tricentennial, bicentennial celebrations. So like I pointed out, though, I say this thing looks like a Stargate. And at one point, I actually decided I got the balls to get a hold of David Barr and ask him, did you ever think of a Stargate, David Barr, when you were designing this thing or, you know, doing the blueprints? And he got back to me and he said, no, sorry, never thought of a Stargate. But he did give me this quote. He said, that said, the green granite spiral that leads around and through the center of the gateway, call it a gateway, takes the visitor on a contemplative walk. It allows them to leave the grid of the city for the sphere of space. So to me, he described exactly what I'm talking about. A Stargate. You know, like I made the point before, I'm not saying these are literal Stargates where I can come through it and come visit you instantaneously in California. I'm saying these are consciousness portals where consciousness, wisdom, information, possibly spirit may be able to come and go. And that's exactly what he described to me. You know, so sometimes I think these guys build these things not 100% knowing exactly what they're doing, kind of like Osamu Noguchi. Or maybe they do, you know. I show the information, I leave it up to the viewer to decide, you know. But so David Barr, he went on to build some other incredible monuments. One other he's recognized for is what they call the Baseline Project, and he put granite obelisks across the entire state of Michigan. And the baseline is this line you see going across the base of Michigan. Granite. Absolutely.
Wow.
Granite obelisk. Wow. And he put one, well, the plan was to put one in every county across the entire state, given little local histories engraved on the obelisks. I know there's a few counties that never got theirs because David Barr ended up passing away, but in general, there's a line of obelisks going across the entire state of Michigan. So, you know, any of this energy here in Detroit, there's a correlated path that could spread the energy out across the state. So here at this is Michigan's point of origin, and it's kind of like Detroit's point of origin. It's where all the measurements, you know, for the state were done. There's this monument right there, and it's in the woods. You know, it's overgrown and nobody visits it anymore. But, you know, it's a kind of cool looking yeah, it's just out there in the middle of nowhere. You can see here the meridian lines pointing in each direction.
They have something similar to this in a town in Connecticut. It's called, go figure, Meriden, Connecticut, but it's spelled the same way as meridian. And yeah, wow, that's really interesting. So this is just it's not even in like a state park, it's just in the woods?
Yeah, there used to be a park there, and I believe the park closed down. So it's kind of fenced off and not very accessible anymore. So, you know, it gets all overgrown. Once in a while, you'll see somebody get in there and Instagram some pictures or something, but it's not like a nice location to go visit or something, you know. But it's a pretty important historical monument, though, you know. Township.
Township.
I
Okay.
believe.
Yeah. So you got Ingham Company, Jackson Company. Oh, interesting. Yeah, and it's so overgrown, like you said too. But that's part of Sir Barr's monuments.
Yeah. So yep, it's overgrown. I like to bring attention to it, hoping someday somebody will get in there and clean it up and bring it back, but I just bring that up because all this energy, there is this line of correlating granite obelisks across the state, just spreading this energy out. But getting back to Detroit and Hart Plaza, that's kind of wraps it up for the symbolism at Hart Plaza. But I like to bring up the story before we leave Hart Plaza and move on, because it took place while Esoteric Noguchi was actually building Hart Plaza. So this is 1974, and Esoteric Noguchi's outside building Hart Plaza. Right next door is Cobo Hall, which is a music venue. And David Bowie's coming to town. He's playing 2 nights in Cobo Hall. David Bowie's a big Detroit fan. He had his Panic in Detroit song. He has connections to Detroit. Long story short, before the show, him and his crew, they're in the hotel getting ready, and the 12 o'clock noon news comes on. And on the news, the anchors come on and say there's been a crashed UFO in town. And, don't be concerned. The military's on it. We'll have more details this evening at 10. So, David Bowie's into this kind of thing, but, so he's paying attention, and he went to play his show that night. And I should point out, this is all in a book by his wife, by the way, but Angela Bowie. The book is called Backstage Passes. This is firsthand accounts from his wife. And that night, while he's playing his show at Cobo Hall, in the middle of the show, he stops his show, and he says, I got this feeling. I seen on the news today that there's a downed UFO, and I had this feeling that there wasn't just one, there was more than one, and they are above us, above Cobo Hall as we speak, watching to see what kind of energy we put off. So, the crowd's going crazy, and he goes on to put on this rip-roaring show. And after the show, he goes back to the hotel room, and that evening, the new newscasters come on and say, sorry about the little incidents this afternoon. We had to fire the previous newscasters. They played a little hoax on the city. There's, no UFO. That was just a hoax. And we fired those guys. They won't be back. And that was kind of the end of the story. Wow. David Bowie, they fired him. So they just, randomly came on and made this up, which I can't see that happening. And David Bowie didn't believe it either. So his story goes, he sent his assistant out downtown Detroit, had him find the biggest telescope they could find. And they had that telescope mounted into the moonroof of their limousine, so they could be on the lookout for the UFO, out of their limousine moonroof through the telescope as they're leaving Detroit. Yeah, so
Bowie's literally just there fucking scoping out through the limousine as they driving around the city. Yeah. Like, what a life.
That's it, man. The Sama Noguchi's probably out building some stuff. Like, who's that crazy dude looking out his limousine moonroof with the telescope, But there's just this energy, And I always point out, I think the veil's thinner,
I had to notice that date was October 19th and 20th. That was the same date that gateway structure got built in 2001.
Wow!
I've been trying to
killer.
I've been trying to pay attention to September, October, November dates because there seems to be a lot more paranormal activity around those parts of the fall season. So.
My birthday is coming up.
Interesting. Yeah. Ooh. Yeah. Are you Libra?
Yeah, my birth was a strange experience.
Ooh, we should get into that. Sometime.
No, I'm just saying I'm strange. There's nothing noteworthy about my birth. Oh, actually, there was. When I was a baby, our apartment fire, there was an apartment fire. And I always think of that Harry Potter scene when he's a baby and the the wizard's trying to get him. I'm like, that was me. The wizard was trying to set our apartment on fire to stop me from entering the world.
Didn't work.
That just to bring you back. That oh, weird. Is my audio doing something weird?
You're a little louder
Is that my
than
headphones?
Chad. That's all I've noticed, but you sound fine.
Okay.
So we got the Motown. I like this
Oh, yeah,
because if you
Motown.
guys haven't noticed, Roman knows, I find some unique songs for the audio version of the show. So we're going to be using some Motown for the Michigan episodes. I think that fits. Maybe a little Bowie
Nice,
at the end,
nice.
too.
Yeah, so
Oh,
I got to bring up
there we
the
go.
Motown part just because, that's what Detroit's known for. But I like to bring it up because when I think of Motown, the one thing Motown means to me is the bringing together of races. A lot of people don't think of it that way, but my mom was a huge Motown fan living in, the area. And I seen these videos over and over again. I always had the same visuals, and that's, you had the red velvet rope with all the white people dancing on one side and all the African Americans dancing on the other. And
What?
they would start the concert like that with these Motown concerts. And it was Motown that they tore down that rope and just mingled and started grooving. And seeing these videos
Wow.
of these ropes coming down and the people just joining and grooving, when I think of the Motown, and I think of that. So I just always like to bring that up. That's the 60s and 70s. So Detroit's moving and grooving. After that, Detroit's
Nice.
now the origin of electronic music, techno music. Many people don't know that, but techno music was born in Detroit and across the river in Canada.
Damn, we found
techno
Juan's
music to me-
doppelganger. Look at that guy, Roman. It looks just like Juan Ayala.
Guess what his name is?
Yeah, Juan
Juan
Atkins. Oh man,
That's crazy.
Crazy. So I get into this.
Yeah, Motown and techno? Wow.
Oh yeah, man. Absolutely. And this really, the birth of this, a lot of it took place at Hart Plaza, with the Electronic Music Festival. A lot of this is coming up through Hart Plaza, So direct correlation.
It makes sense. I always think of techno as more of like an international type of music, and Detroit's right there on the border. Makes sense,
Yeah.
I saw it.
International, industrial.
Wow. Detroit is known around. So who's this? Juan Atkins literally is said to be the originator of techno. No, we're talking techno as.
Yeah, he's not the originator. This is one of his signs, But the sound, he was one of them. But there's the Bellevue Three, Jeff Mills. There's a whole group of guys that all grew up together, around Detroit, throwing raves and stuff. I went to a lot of these raves, man, as it was coming up, and it was crazy, like being there as the scene was emerging, so to speak. But I just like to go over these because these are all things that originated in Detroit. Motown originated in Detroit. Techno and electronic music, which I think always makes me think of past, present, and future, originated in Detroit. And acid rap or murder rap or dark hip hop also originated in Detroit. And most people don't know the influence of all these rappers who have came out of Detroit. People know Kid Rock, people know Eminem, some people know ICP, but all of these guys were influenced by this guy, Esham. Esham the Unholy was his nickname. And we're talking, this is 1989. This guy changed the game in Detroit. Changed the game. This is the time out in LA, we got NWA, talking about fuck the police. Here in Detroit, things were different. He came out with, he called acid rap or murder rap, and it was this devil worshiping, Satan grooving hip hop that caught on with all the kids, including myself. When I was a sophomore in high school, and this was my thing. You know, you can see that red cassette tape? That was the first cassette tape. You guys even know what cassette tapes are, man?
I have one.
That was the first cassette tape.
Yeah, dude, come on. Oh, my.
I used to have a car with cassette tapes.
Wow.
But this was the first red cassette tape. And when you held this thing in your hand, man, I tell you what, there was something different.
There's an energy to it.
And as a rebellious sophomore, a rebellious high school kid, you know, listening to this was it. Yeah. I'm going to play just a quick sample. Let's see if this works for you. Can you guys hear it?
No. When you share your screen, you got to go click the share audio. So if you just unshare real quick and then share, it'll. Are you sure? Because I'm kind of.
I'll try real quick.
Yeah, just unshare and then share again and then hit the share audio. But real quick, I want to say to everybody, that's interesting. I didn't know that Kid Rock was out of Detroit too, because when I was in second or third grade, the music I was banging my head to right after Britney Spears was Kid Rock, Eminem, and Rob Zombie. There's like that combo was I was so young and like on the bus listening to this. God, oh man, yeah, that shit fueled me.
All right, we're gonna skip this. We're gonna skip the sound. So we're gonna skip the sound. But anyway, anyone wants to listen to Esham, Booming Words from Hell, and you'll hear the music that changed the whole environment. There we go. Thank you.
Get the fuck on. Sitting down in a crack house, earning my pay. There's some bass that jump crazy, I'll just blow them away, cause I'm fully wrapped.
I ain't taking that.
That's just the first 20 seconds. Right, so, I don't want to play too much and get a copyright strike on YouTube, but you can find the album on YouTube.
Yeah. But anyway, this was the
Were you wearing Jinko jeans?
I was, yeah, absolutely.
I could see that bopping up and down the school hallway.
We'd be there with you, brother. Jinko'd out, dancing to some Esham.
Cross-color
Roman would be breakdancing. Right on. Well, yeah, it definitely feels like a lot of the conspiracy, what I would call like underground rap, found influence in this, because like I was not aware of this, but you know, the 90s rappers that I was listening to were probably, you know, inspired by this to some degree.
Oh, absolutely. Here on this slide, I just put some of the names of his songs to give you an idea, you know: Devil's Groove, Red Rum, For All the Suicidalist, Old Wicked Shit, Devil's Night, Devil Shit, 9 Dead Bodies,
some old wicked shit.
Losing My Religion. Oh, that's a good one. I got that one memorized. Judgment Day.
Yeah, no surprise coming
so
from
you get an idea.
From the city that has a pentagram built into it, that this stuff is, you know, found its home.
That's kind of my point. I wonder if this you know, this underbelly, this darkness somehow works its way into these guys' rap. Now, this guy, when he came out with this stuff, this first album, he wrote this when he was 13 years old, going to Osborne High School in Detroit. Time he released it, he was 15. But if you listen to the words on this stuff, it don't even make sense how the guy would know the stuff he's rapping about. And so anyway, he had a couple spin-offs. This was his other group, Modus, obviously Satan spelled backwards. And just to show you the influence he had, here's him and his boy Kid Rock as he was mentoring Kid Rock growing up. And I actually seen these guys in 1991 perform together. Kid Rock opened up DJing for Esham, you know.
Dude.
A sophomore in high school, was the exact same age as these guys.
No way. Dude, I just went down a Kid Rock rabbit hole the other week, just like looking at his first few albums. And it's funny, like the rap that he was doing, it's very like, I mean, it wouldn't fly today at all, but it was very like, yeah, I'm the white boy on the scene, who cares? Like all this like racial stuff, but it was good. It wasn't terrible, but it's not what he does now, that's for sure.
No. And some people, you know,
Set the boogie, set up, jump the boogie.
Some of these guys went mainstream. You know, Kid Rock, he went mainstream. You know, Eminem, he was later, he obviously went mainstream. But what a lot of people don't realize, this is Esham.
I'll put your picture away.
And I'm sure you guys are familiar with ICP. This is where they got their gimmick.
Really?
Is that they looked up to Esham too. Yeah, they looked up to Esham too. Yeah, here's him, and standing between all of them, and that's where they decided to start wearing their clown paint. Initially, they were called the Inner City Posse. This is their very first album, Dog Beats, Inner City Posse, and by their next album, they're following Esham. Esham's on the east side. They're over on the west side of Detroit. They seen Homie Don't Play come out, and they changed the game. So, it wasn't too long. They came out, they're now Wicked Clowns. So now it's an Insane Clown Posse. So that's kind of...
Was that when
Road?
When Esham was doing that, was he playing off of Homie the Clown from that TV show? Is that where that reference is?
That reference absolutely came from the show was called In Living Color.
Right.
Back in the mid 80s, and the Wayne brothers was their name, if I'm not mistaken. And there was a Homie the Clown, he'd hit people with his sock or something. Homie Don't Play That, hit him with the sock. Wow.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, that's where
In Living Color's so good.
Yeah, that's where that came from. Absolutely.
Okay, and you got the Fago over your right shoulder there. You don't have to slip past that. We noticed that.
He's got the Fago on fleek. He's got the Fago on fleek. He's got the flavor of the week. Yeah.
So, oh man, that was awful, but it was worth it. Fago,
yeah, Roman's singing and the taste of the Fago was awful.
That's so bad, dude. So bad. But I bring it up because they got their own. This is a ritual. They call it the Fago showers, and I call it a ritual. That's what I call it, it's the ritual. And they'll take these Fago bottles and they spray the crowd with it. And, you're trying to get sprayed with their Fago. And you never smell nothing like a juggalo crowd mixed with weed smoke, cheap booze, and Fago. It leaves a particular odor that you'll never forget, man. Never.
I feel like they were fucking with the MD 2020.
That is kind of demonic, dude. I mean, soda is like this gross acid. It's filled with sugar. I mean, it's so bad for you, and they're just spraying it all over people. It's very demonic when you step back and look at it from a cultic perspective.
It is, and I'll admit I loved ICP too, but looking back on it now, it's like, to me, you got this cult like family, and you got these rituals, and I don't think they're really a cult. I just think it's a group of misfits that all fit in together. But that's the same as talking about Aleister Crowley, do what thou wilt. That's these guys that's their attitude, do what thou wilt, which is fine. But that's we talked about the Aleister Crowley leaving his magic underpinnings in Detroit. And now we have stuff like this coming out of Detroit. It could be synchronicity, but I just like to point it out because we had this dark hip hop. FBI, the FBI said if you're a juggalo, you are labeled a gang member. I mean, literally, the FBI, I think in 2017 said you're a gang member if you're a juggalo. So the juggalos decided, well, we're not gang members. We're going to march on Washington, D.C., and they actually marched on Washington, D.C. in 2000, and I think it was 17, just, prove that this family
stop
supposedly-
it. Oh my God.
Yeah, take a look at that for a minute. It's pretty funny. And you got the reflection pool back here with the obelisk, you know, some pretty cool symbolism going on.
Wow.
You know, but now just bring all this up because the veil may be thinner in Detroit, where even the music, you got the light side, you got the Motown, you got the electronic side, and you got the dark side. And it seems to all come through. And it's still happening. Like to this day, there's still this dark hip hop scene. This is my buddy Darren. Swing D Diablo, Brimstone Labs, and here he is with guess who? Esham. Esham is still influencing this dark hip hop. Yeah, this is my buddy. I went to school with him. The one thing is though, these guys, like you see these pictures, you're like, man, these must be some evil looking dudes. These are some of the nicest guys I know. Darren, this is one of the nicest dudes you've ever met. I don't know ICP, but you know, I know secondhand accounts. They're great guys, really good growers. You know, there's cool guys. But when it comes to writing down their lyrics, you know, it starts coming to this dark hip hop. And so this is Swing
that
D
calligraphy,
Diablo,
man. It's no joke. It's
Yeah. This is Black Magic. He's part of the Brimstone Labs, but as you can see, it all stems back to this one guy, Esham. Homie Don't Play, inspiring. You know, I showed you Kid Rock as a kid, Eminem, ICP. To this day, the dark hip hop scene in Detroit. I just think the veil may be a little thinner and people in this area pick up on it and it finds a way to spread. Now I'm going to get back to
with all the gateway symbolism too, and all the music being birthed out of there. Like you have stacking all that gateway symbolism, and then all this new music coming out, Motown, techno, this hip hop, and this hip hop is, I mean, it's huge, dude. I mean, it's huge, and influenced massive music. So that is so interesting. There's thick, steamy cloud of interesting shit going on here, brother.
It is too, yeah. I like to throw the cultural undertones in, cultural underpinnings, because it ranges greatly in Detroit, man. You'll find the coolest, most lighthearted, you know, things going on, and then you'll find some deep and dark and sinister things going on. You know, I just point out, I think the veil's thinner and things come through. Speaking of coming through, I'm going to go back to Belle Isle real quick. This was the realm of Sleeping Bear, the serpent goddess, and the gatekeeper we talked about earlier. But we never looked at any of the art and architecture that emerged there. So I want to take a little journey onto Belle Isle, and I always point out when you see obelisks and you see arches, many times you're going to find a gateway or a gateway symbolism. And as you can see, the bridge leading on the Belle Isle, you have two obelisks when you get on it. You drive over a whole bunch of arches, and as you cross the other side, there's two more obelisks. I always make this point, you know, with the gateway arch, that when you see obelisks, they can be symbolic of a gateway. And the gateway arch, the artist made it so from the side, it looked like an obelisk. But from the front, it looked like an arch, and it gives you the gateway. So I always point that out. So on Belle Isle, the architecture over the years all had arches everywhere. Very beau art, you know, arches in the aquarium, arches in the aquarium, the horticulture building. This building was actually designed by the architects as a replication of the Crystal Palace. You know,
in San Francisco,
the Crystal Palace, and it was supposed to be. No, this was the Crystal Palace in, was it Paris, I believe? One of the World's Fairs. I'm not sure which one it was. I think it was Paris.
They did that in San Francisco as well. They had the Crystal Palace for the 1915 World's Exhibition, Panama Pacific. And they also had the horticulture building too, which is like one of the buildings they tore down. And it was like this most fascinating, it kind of looked similar to this. I wonder if the architects for the...
This may be that one. It's possible. When I saw Crystal Palace, I thought it was the one in Paris, but now you're saying that maybe it is.
So San Francisco could have also been ripping it off of Paris as well.
True. But the point I'm making is just arches everywhere. In every building, there's arch. And if it's not a building with arches, it's a building that looks like an obelisk. This is the Carillon Tower. So we have a Carillon Tower that actually looks like an obelisk that goes off 3 times a day, sending vibrations across the whole island. The lighthouse is symbolic of an obelisk according to the artist. David Kahn, the architect, said this is, symbolic of an obelisk, and it's the only marble lighthouse in the world.
Wow.
This was one of my spots. Yeah, it's beautiful. This spot has a special feeling. This is one of my spots. I'd go here because there's a fence around it, so I could take my dogs here, let my dogs run free without anybody freaking out. So I've spent hundreds of hours sitting on the steps of this marble obelisk, and it's a beautiful feeling, amazing feeling.
Is Livingstone a real name?
Yes, absolutely. He was the president of the Lake Carriers Association, which is an association that deals with all the big freighters that go up and down the Detroit River here. So, as a lighthouse for the freighters, it was dedicated to him.
Nice. But that name Livingstone reminds me of like a master mason of sorts, like a freighter name or like a Rosicrucian. Yeah, I was like, ooh, who's this character?
Yeah, I've actually never did much research into him. That's something I should look up at some point for some reason. But so all the arches and all the obelisks, I'd be sitting out here waiting. When's the gateway coming? Well, the gateway came a few months ago. I just happened to go back out there, and they were building the gateway as I went out there. And you walk up, and the first thing you see is this kind of Stonehenge-ish looking thing with a table in the middle of it. So I could, you can tell it's a map of Michigan. You get closer to the map of Michigan, it has all these blue jewels all over the map. And the blue jewels represent cities. And so the first city I look for is Detroit. And what's it say? It says Detroit's the southern gateway. It says it right on the table. It's clear as day. And if you follow the path from Detroit, it leads to Ironwood, which is the northern gateway. So I was excited. I came out here, and there's some gateway symbolism. Once again, it says it on the table in the middle of this Stonehenge-ish looking monument. And this is all, come to find out, it's called the Iron Bell Trail. Even the symbol for the Iron Bell kind of looks like a wormhole. You stretch it a little bit. But the Iron Bell Trail is actually a bike trail that leads from here at Belle Isle to the tip of the Upper Peninsula. So like hundreds and hundreds of miles. So this is the beginning of that trail and the monument. So you walk up and a giant boulder, wondering what it says. And this is called the One World Under Michigan Stars. This whole time I've been researching this ancient world being buried under Michigan stars for years. And it says right on the plaque that this is the Southern Gateway. The Ralph C. Jr. Gateway welcomes the world to explore Michigan's Bell Trail. The trail runs between the Northern Gateway and Ironwood and the Southern Gateway and Belle Isle. So I won't go through the whole thing, but in the first paragraph it says Gateway 4 or 5 times. It already said Gateway twice on the table. So for me, I'm pretty satisfied that there's gateway symbolism out there, and here's the monument. This is the One Under Michigan Stars Gateway. And it's beautiful. And this
the game with the blue jewels.
Remember, this sits. The blue jewels.
Yeah,
the
what's
blue
up with
jewels are symbolic. Yep, they're symbolic of the lakes and the rivers in Michigan. And the jagged edges, that is supposed to be the skyline of Detroit to your left and the skyline of Canada to your right. And the two skylines together, according to the artist, create a crack in the sky. So they create a crack in the sky, creating a gateway. And if you look through that gateway, You look at that.
I was just about to ask. Oh, wow.
Yep. So
did you superimpose that moon there?
Better alignment.
Is that real?
I didn't take this picture. I don't know. I found this online. I didn't take this picture. It's all real except for the moon. I can't tell you because I can never get a picture to look like that.
Yeah,
I'll be honest. I can't get the moon to look like that.
That's really cool.
But I've got pictures. I've got pictures of the obelisk through it, and so I know that's real. But the moon, I can't. I know that time of year it's where the moon should be. I can give it that, but that's about all I can say. But regardless, there's a definite gateway alignment there. And what we got to remember is this is the realm of the gatekeeper. This is the realm of Chief Sleeping Bear and the gatekeeper. So I always point out this gateway symbolism seems to reemerge where it was once buried.
Wow.
And speaking of resurfacing, remember this was Chief Sleeping Bear. His daughter was going to be immortalized as a female white doe deer, according to legend. Well, imagine the surprise. I have a little spot out in the woods where I take my dogs and sit there and smoke on this certain log I used to like. And I was sitting on this log, and this truck pulls up behind this. They're building a zoo. I could see through the woods, and they're unloading some deer. And they unload this family of white albino deer, just like the legend. Now, did the zoo know the legend and go out and spend extra money on these deer? Maybe, but I really doubt it. I seriously doubt it. I think this was a synchronicity, personally. So that is how the serpent goddess resurfaced on Belle Isle, the gateway.
You really think it's just synchronicity? Because that's too pinpoint, brother. Like who the fuck just says, hey, got this family of albino deer. You know what? I was thinking, let's put them on Belle Isle. That has to be planned. Like, that's crazy.
I don't know. Like, I know Detroit, and they would not go out and spend extra money on deer for the albino type to fulfill a legend. And I know albino deer are more expensive because my stepdad raised deer and elk. So I know albino deer are way more expensive. And I know a family of albino deer that you can breed are even more expensive.
Wow.
So
I've honestly never gone down the agriculture side of deer and elk. I've hunted plenty and, see them all around. But man, it must be hard to tame. That can't be an easy job, dude.
Well, they're not tame. They're fenced in. They get, they're tamer than your wild deer.
How do you harvest?
So we got two possibilities.
With a gun?
You don't harvest. Well, in this case, you don't harvest them. I mean, in this case, it's at a zoo.
No, I'm sorry. I was just strictly asking how, like, for when your stepdad was doing that, do you know much of the process? Like, because for cattle and things, it's really easy because they don't, jump over fences, they don't run away. You're hunting each one individually?
Yeah, I mean, you can get into the details if you want. It's kind of gruesome.
Roman's going to go out with a Bowie knife and just get out there.
I'm just saying, I've tanned hides, I've hunted, I've done all the animals. There's barely an animal.
Save it for your interview with Joe Rogan. All right, this is the hunting podcast.
Okay, I was curious though. I was actually genuinely curious, but yeah. So
we can talk about that, Robbie.
But it is a zoo, so I don't think the animals are supposed to be killed.
Yeah.
No, I meant for just the agricultural purposes of his stepfather. That was it. Not these ones. I like these guys. Don't eat these guys. Look at this cute little guy.
Robbie's trying to harvest the serpent goddess. Come on, man. All right, so the symbolism just resurfaces. It resurfaces with the gateway sculpture. It resurfaced with the albino deer. Just a couple weeks ago, they just, I was downtown looking, make sure there was nothing new, and they put this new one in. I call it the Lion's Gate. It's a brand new gateway, exactly halfway between Hart Plaza and Campus Mars. So they're still putting more gateways. And the reason for this gateway is the NFL's holding its draft here in 2024. They started the countdown. You can see 700 minutes or 700 days up here. But this is another one of those synchronicities. I drove down here. I went to Belle Isle 1 week. A week later, I went down. I forgot to go to Campus Martin Hart Plaza, park the car, get out. And the construction workers were literally packing up their gear and leaving. They just installed this. You can see this reporter here with this camera. It's the only camera there. They started the clock at 700 days. So I don't know how to explain it all the time, but sometimes it feels like the world's like kind of just developing in front of you as you go. Well, this was one of those times. So, I looked it up, and they call it the Lion's Gate. 2 things pop up now. This pops up, and this pops up. And this was an Instagram post from a Detroit Lion. His name Calvin Johnson, and his nickname was Megatron. And I bring this up because he's talking about, I just emerged from the Detroit Stargate. So it's not every day you see a Detroit Lion under a Stargate talking about he just emerged from it. And so I'm trying to figure out what's going on here. If you look close, he's wearing these primitive shirts, him and his buddy. His buddy was a Detroit Lion also. And the thing with these guys is they're some of the 2 youngest guys ever to retire. They're both awesome players, but they retired because they felt like it was a better idea to go into growing some cannabis. So this is them promoting their cannabis operation under the Detroit Stargate. So not one last synchronicity. So I decided to find out a little bit about their operation, primitive, because I haven't heard about it yet. And they're just opening it kind of as we speak. And it happens to be they're opening it down in southern Michigan, in Niles, Michigan. Well, we just happened to talk about Niles, Michigan last week. It was where Horace Dodge was born. It was kind of a synchronicity. But synchronistically, they're opening up their cannabis farm in Niles, Michigan also.
This is a little 3-gallon pots?
Yeah, I think they got them going in grow dans. I don't like their operation personally, man. They got the double ended still in there.
And they got the Govindas up there.
Yeah,
You guys are doing some real inside baseball talk right now. I'm like, what?
Calvin Johnson.
I'm so lost. Well, I just want to point out, Chad, I can sense your excitement and your passion, but you did this last episode too. I just want to point it out because I know there's going to be listeners who get mad about this. You're like, every now and then you like punctuate your point by like slamming on your desk like you're like giving an impassioned speech. Gotcha. So just cool it with that.
Notice, thank you.
The passion is great, but cool it with the banging on the desk because people are gonna get so mad about that. I can already see it.
Damn double-ended.
Oh, that was it was Esham. It wasn't me. Sorry. All right, so I'm going to show you one last monument in Detroit before we move on from Detroit. And this was just built also. This is called the Floating Citadel. And this was to be symbolic of a Native American fort that used to be right here. And this is in front of Cobo Hall and Hart Plaza, same place where David Bowie played. And this is supposed to be symbolic of the Native Americans fort. And if you notice, this Native American fort looks similar to a star fort. Like this is the only Native American fort I've ever seen with this particular shape. And the only thing I can get from that is I know the Native Americans in this area, they burnt down the 2 star forts previously. They burnt down the British star fort. They burnt down the French star fort. So I wonder if they said, oh, it was kind of a cool shape, we're going to build ours like that too. But regardless, here's an ancient document saying this is the Native American Citadel. So here's the floating citadel as it's being unveiled. Just went down there last weekend so I can get some fresh pictures of it. This is in front of the auto show. See these cops everywhere. Had no clue Joe Biden was giving a talk inside. I had picked the wrong day to go.
Oh, how is this representative of a star fort?
Aerial view.
Yeah, that's a great question.
All I can say is when you get the aerial view.
Yeah.
You'll see when we get to what the artist says.
Okay.
So this is an aerial view, and you can see it looks very Atlantean to me. It's got the concentric rings. I would have never noticed that if I wouldn't have came across this picture. That giant rubber duck standing out. I don't have nothing to say about that except it was there when I got down there. World's largest rubber ducky happened to be sitting there, so there's a picture of it.
I think that's part of
Rubber
Joe
duckies
Biden's rider when he goes to a city. He just requests that people do this.
We need to have a rubber ducky. World's biggest rubber ducky.
So the Citadel, what the artist says. I always try to go back to what the artist says. This is for people not watching. It's this bronze globe, kind of looks like a cage. That's a globe. You can see through it. According to the artist, the bronze globe harks back to the thousands of years mining in Michigan's Upper Peninsula and the copper and the iron ore that traveled down to the Great Lakes to Detroit. It also pays tribute to ancient native shorelines, the Savoyard Creek and the original Detroit River Edge. The name is a reference to the original walled village boundaries and its defense core, the Citadel, which was located where the sculpture will stand. Visually inspired by East Jordan Ironworks, the cast iron grates that are found throughout Michigan. Floating citadels form references celestial bodies, astrolabs, cages, drains, thresholds, mystic symbols, and human skeletons, specifically echoing the idea of a rib cage, which protects life but also traps us on the earthly plane, the group says. The work is meant to represent a global, a terrestrial object, and yet an ascending spiritual form. So, in the artist's own words, he put this mystical symbol down here that represents object between worlds, between realms, So the symbolism just keeps coming. Like, this was last weekend. It's still emerging in Detroit.
On some sort of initiatory level, man. You gotta
wait. Hold on.
Yeah.
So Joe Biden gave a speech the same week that this piece was installed?
The piece was installed and it was unveiled about a week ago. The piece was unveiled about a week before Joe Biden got there.
Okay.
The Detroit Auto Show is taking place as we speak, and the private week before the public could get into the auto show was last week. And I guess Joe Biden was there giving some talk about electric cars or something like that. So yeah, but the ducky
and everybody in Detroit's like, get out of here.
Yeah, he's like, we need electric cars. The vroom vroom. Saturday nights when we all go out, everybody loves it. Come on, you got your iPhone, you got your Netflix. They all work off electricity, folks. That's a quote.
That is actually super synchronistic, man. With that it was unveiled the week after, and that the floating citadel, Was that a contest or was that just a random artist? Because random artists can't just put things places. They have to be hired for specific positions. Things are unveiled at certain times for certain reasons, and it's all pretty pre-planned because it costs money. Like you said, Detroit, they just don't spend money on anything. They obviously spend money on building motherfucking Stargates. So interesting.
Yeah, this one in particular is unusual because I don't think they did have a contest. I think they just picked the artist. And the artist they picked, his name is Scott Hocking. And he does some kind of strange work like this. Like, one of his projects was building pyramids around the city, but building them out of junk and building them in like dilapidated buildings. Another one, he would mow crop circles into abandoned buildings, parking lots and stuff. So this guy did kind of different weird projects. And I think they just picked him, and this is a pretty important historical spot. So, this is the one time I don't think they had a contest. So I'm not sure how he got, worked his way into that, or if they just had an idea in mind, But, yep, look up, anyone wants to look, Scott Hocking, and you'll see some of the strange pieces of artwork he did before this.
Wow.
So maybe we'll leave Detroit because everything we've looked at for probably 3 hours now has been in a couple blocks radius. We've looked at Hart Plaza, Campus Mars, and Belle Isle, and we're talking about a small radius where all of that symbolism and energy emerged. But that same kind of craziness takes place across the entire state of Michigan. And I like to refer to this part of my presentation as the Great Lakes Triangle. Now, there's a triangle that encompasses the entire Great Lakes region, all the lakes, all 5 lakes. And within this triangle, more disappearances, vanishings, UFO sightings have been documented per capita than the Bermuda Triangle by far. Now, if you look close at this image here, the big triangle, that's the Great Lakes Triangle. But if you scale it down to the red triangle, that's in Lake Michigan. That's called the Lake Michigan Triangle. And things get even more concentrated down in the Lake Michigan Triangle. I mean, hundreds of ships disappearing, planes vanishing, never to be found, people disappearing, reappearing. And we'll talk about that in one moment. We also have the Marysburg Vortex Triangle. Same scenario, where in this triangle, there's a documented meteoric impact right in the middle of this triangle. All the navigational maps tell you to go around it, but around this documented area, same thing, disappearances and mishaps. So
right
today, I'd just like to go through, we'll
go back to that real quick, Chad. Right where the if you go back to that last image, right where that yellow triangle is pointing to, the acute point, right? Not the baseline point, but the acute point going north. It's facing island chain along this river that separates Canada and upstate New York. So right where that blue Great Lakes Triangle goes across that river is a region called the Thousands Islands regions, right? And the natives called that the islands of the Manitou, right? Or the Garden of the Manitou.
Yeah.
And the Skull and Bones have their summer hideaway headquarters up in the Thousands Islands region there. And then Thousands Islands dressing comes from up there too. But yeah, it's interesting that that's connected to the triangle here. Wow.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I didn't realize that. That's a highly, highly energetic area up in that area for sure. So just point out that all kinds of UFO sightings in Michigan. The one that people are familiar with mostly is when J. Allen Hynek came to town back in the 60s and declared that the cops and residents have been chasing UFOs around for a week. He declared that these cops have been chasing around swamp gas. So we have tons of UFO sightings. We have all kinds of electromagnetic anomalies, and we'll talk about those being documented in a few minutes. And a lot of those anomalies just happen to have ancient stone circles in the same exact vicinity as the anomalies. So pretty sure the ancients also recognized the anomalies. Now, before we look at the stone circles and the magnetic anomalies, I thought I'd go over a few of the disappearances. Maybe one person, do one plane, and do one ship. So we'll start with the people, because vanishing people is just strange, and this is a really strange one. And this is the case of Steven Kubacki. And this is the 1970s, and Steven Kubacki's a student at Hope College in Michigan, southern Michigan, right off the Lake Michigan Triangle we talked about. And he's an adventurer. He likes to go out cross-country skiing, and it's the wintertime, so he tells his parents he's going out cross-country skiing. And, well, he never returns. So they started a search right away. That night they start a search. They get the helicopters. They have snowmobilers, all kinds of people. And some snowmobilers ended up finding his belongings. They found his skis, a backpack, and his ski boots. His ski boots had actually stepped out of his skis and walked out onto the ice of Lake Michigan. They followed the prints, and the boots stopped, and the prints vanished. And, well, that was kind of the end of the story. The cops eventually told Steven's parents, we found the end of the trail. He must have fallen through the ice, although there was, no hole in the ice. They said maybe it froze back over. He must have fallen through the ice, and that was it. They declared Steven dead. Well, 11 months later, and hundreds of miles away, Steven wakes up on a hillside. And he wakes up in good condition. He's got a backpack next to him. He's supposedly wearing fresh, clean clothes. I want to say he was in Massachusetts, if I'm not mistaken. And, he hikes down the hill. He finds himself a payphone, gets a hold of his sister, and come to find out his dad over the past year had moved, and his dad doesn't live too far away, so he works his way to his dad's house, and they reunite, and that was kind of the end of the story. They wanted him to see a psychologist, and he wouldn't really talk to the newspapers. He did one small interview and said, to the best of his knowledge, maybe he ran a marathon. He had some marathon shirt on. He had some fresh sneakers, but he really didn't know. And he wouldn't go to the psychologist. He ended up becoming a psychologist, but never really talked about the story again. And I've tried to Facebook him and ask him about it. He doesn't want anything to do with it. And you can still find him. He's a big adventurer. You can find him climbing mountains all over the world.
Well, and I remember from your first, I remember from our first conversation, you said he landed in Pittsfield, Massachusetts, which is very far away. Although it is on the other side of New York State, it's only one state away. It's extremely far away, and I've been to Pittsfield. It's very interesting up there. There's this Blueberry Mountain up there, and if you go to the top of the mountain, you can drive your car onto the top, and you have this beautiful view of the western border of Massachusetts and New York. So who knows? Maybe he ended up there. Maybe there's a corresponding, energy vortex here in New England. Peter Shampoo and hint, hint, Tara and I will be talking about that when we have our episode of Esoteric America. But yeah, Pittsfield, Massachusetts is definitely an interesting place on this side of the states.
Wouldn't that be crazy if you woke up on Blueberry Hill and you'd been there? That's crazy. Yeah. So, it's a weird story, but I feel comfortable bringing it up because I've come across other stories like this where people vanish and reappear with no memory. So, really strange. Yeah. But to me, even stranger is when we start talking about planes and ships, because these things are huge, especially in the modern day. So this one's about a plane. This is the Traverse City Cherry Festival. And this is my backyard. I go to this cherry festival every year. I go to the air show every year. And the Blue Angels come in and fly, and they'll have Russian jets and all these different cool jets come in. And in this particular year, here you can see me and my buddy and my son a couple years ago. But this particular year, 1990s, this pilot from Quincy, Indiana flew up, and he was going to be flying this new Czechoslovakian MiG in the air show. And so before the air show, they always go out for test runs, little test fly. And in this case, he was going to allow the local college air teacher to go with him. So it was Don Scaler, the pilot, with the local college teacher. And they hopped in his MiG and went out for the test flight. And like I said, you're seeing how busy this area is at the time. There's just boats and people everywhere. And he's zipping around the bay. And they had, back at the airport, they have him on radar. And he's zipping around the bay. And they lose radar contact. And for all intents and purposes, he vanishes. I mean, middle of the day, vanishes. So instantaneously, they start sending out, they send out the Coast Guard. They send out the Blue Angels are in town. So even the Blue Angels are out there zipping around, looking for one of their fellow comrades that possibly had went down. And they never found nothing. They didn't find any debris. They didn't find any oil slick. I mean, even locals in their boats, heard about this over the radio and seen the commotion. So you had people on their boats out there searching, and they've drugged the lake and, years afterwards, and they have still never found this guy in his plane. So you see on this image, this is the search radius. Right here is Traverse City, where he took off from. And they say as far as he could have got on radar before, was Beaver Island. So this was their search radius. So I always point out, that's the search radius. And synchronistically, we have on Beaver Island here, we have a giant stone circle, I believe marking a magnetic anomaly. Down here in Grand Traverse Bay, we have an underwater stone circle, I believe marking an underwater anomaly, magnetic anomaly. And now we have the Albatross, the plane, went down or seemingly vanished somewhere between these ancient stone circles. And it could probably 100% synchronicity, probably, maybe, I don't know. But they've never found this plane.
Portal.
And portal. I can go with that. I can totally go with that.
And those islands, it said Manitou Island, north and south, and then Beaver Island had the stone circle on it. Wow.
Yep, the Manitou Islands, absolutely. And the state cops, this is a YouTube clip. I'm not going to play it because I don't think it'll play the way I'm sharing, but this is a YouTube clip. You can find it. And this is the pilot's wife. And, well, this is a newscast. And here you can see her, and she's telling the newscasters that, well, the state police told me that he went down in the Great Lakes Triangle. Don't really know what to say, but, the state cops said he went down in the Great Lakes Triangle. And to me, I had no idea that, one, the cops knew what the Great Lakes Triangle was. Two, they had the nerve to tell the widow that her husband, was a victim of the Great Lakes Triangle. Mm-hmm. But, it's here on the newscast, Channel 7 newscast.
It's what they believe, too.
Wow. We always talk about...
Oh.
Now, wait, one moment. What was the name of that pilot?
32... Don Scaler, I believe. Schaler.
Okay.
Not to be confused with scalar technology.
Precisely on the 45th.
Literally wireless technology.
Halfway between the equator and the North Pole. So if you see the stone circle here in Grand Traverse Bay, lies exactly 5th. So... how that corresponds, I don't know, but we always bring up the parallel, so I thought that was super important to bring up. Exactly halfway between the equator and North Pole. Now, here are some of the pictures of the underwater stone circle right there on the 45th. The magnetic anomaly where the plane went missing. This is kind of a weird image, but this is the actual stone circle right here. But what's unique about the stone circle is that the Michigan archaeologist, when he went down there scuba diving to scope this out and make sure it was legit, he came back and said, yeah, this is 100% authentic. Not only is it authentic, but it's got to be at least 10,000 years old, because that's the last time this stone circle would have been above the surface. The lake levels would have been low enough. And on one of the main boulders, there's a mastodon carving. Like undeniably a mastodon carving. So they call this the Lake Michigan Stonehenge. And just got to warn you many times, if you search Lake Michigan Stonehenge, you'll get pictures of these standing stones that look like Stonehenge underwater. That's not the real deal. The real deal, there's these giant boulders in a circular feature, but there's a mastodon carved on one of them. Super cool, so you don't got to try to elaborate on them. Now, leading away from the stone circle is a line of rocks that leads for miles in a perfectly direct line towards Beaver Island, which is where the other stone circle is. So the archaeologists say the stone line is what they call Caribou Drive Lane, which the hunters would filter the caribou down the line. And then supposedly the archaeologist said the hunter would hide inside the circle, filter the caribou down the drive lane. Then when the caribou got to the circle or the mastodon got to the circle, they would kill it. Possible. But I point out this is an ancient megalithic stone circle with the ancient megalithic line of stones leading to the north for miles, pointing directly to another stone circle on Beaver Island. It's an alignment. So I think that's just as likely, you know. So that's kind of the story of the missing albatross between the two ancient stone circles, you know.
There's a lot there, and the Project Magnet, which did you bring that up already? Project Magnet, or are we am I blowing the load on that? Uh-oh.
Testing. Earth to Chad. I think we lost Chad. Chad, hold on a second. Let me see if I can help you out. All right, Roman.
Those thing gets a trip though. That guy's name was Scalar.
Scalar Wave. What were you
Dude,
thinking?
just saying.
What were you thinking, Tara?
I was wondering if there's any myths that go along with the alignments.
Well, the mastodon, that would be
Symbolism.
you know, thousands and thousands of years ago. Chad's finally back. Here he is. Just a moment ago, we lost him. Now he's back.
All right.
All
Let's
right.
see. Where did I lose you guys at?
We were asking you questions, but I don't think you heard any of the questions because you faded out on us. But we just left off at the Beaver Island stone alignment, and then Roman asked you if it was connected to something, and then he also noted that Scalar is an interesting last name for this man.
Yeah.
Ooh. Hey, good connection, Romy. Scalar, yeah.
It's like if it's dealing with, because you know how the news does it, you know? I mean, granted, it's like you can't downplay. Is everything synchronicity? Is it, you know, divinely timed? Is he fulfilling some sort of archetypal role? Like the Mr. Scalar got into being a pilot when he did. So this one occurrence could come and make the synchronicity of like, you know, there's this etherical type of energy wavelength that is called scalar waves. And, you know, I mean, I don't know, you know, it's just interesting. And yeah, you got the stone circles and magnetic anomalies and, you know, missing people, missing timeline portals, potential timeline dimensions. It's like, oy, oy, oy. And you got the gateways and the obelisk all over. You ever taken a Geiger counter to any of these places?
I have not. I haven't taken any instrumentation yet. That would be a good idea and probably a good thing to do.
Or maybe just like a divining rod, like a water witch.
Yes.
Yeah, I take my crystal skull with me everywhere. Maybe
Nice.
a pendulum or something might be cool. Yeah.
Pendulum too, yeah.
Yeah. I take this guy everywhere I go. This guy goes with me.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Do you do
all the energy in all the places in here?
Yeah, man. Do you soak it at all? Do you like put it in the sun or moonlight or anything like that along those lines? So obelisk pipe?
All the time. Yeah.
Labradorite pipe, but yeah, now that we're showing off crystals. Tara's got some cool ones too. So what's the Kinross incident?
All right, so we'll go through the Kinross, but I'll be kind of brief on it because we touched on it on a previous episode with Jeff from Wisconsin. So I don't want to rehash too much, but this was the incident in Sault Ste. Marie where the Air Force caught a UFO on their radar. And they vectored in a Scorpion plane to check out the situation. And they have it all on radar. And as the Scorpion was getting closer to the UFO, the two blips were getting closer. So eventually, the two blips merged. And I'm showing these images from a comic book just because they make for good visuals. But eventually, the two blips merged and then vanished off radar. Moments later, one blip reappeared, but it was the blip for the UFO. The blip for the Scorpion U.S. Air Force plane never reemerged. It vanished. And once again, they instantaneously sent out more Air Force jets to try to find out what happened. So they sent out a couple more Scorpions, a helicopter. They sent out some Coast Guard, and no sight of them. Once again, no oil slick, no wreckage, nothing. And this is pretty much instantaneous response. And the only thing anybody ever said is one of the searchers in the jet said he thought he had heard a garbled message over the intercom that sounded like Lieutenant Monclov. But this was, a half hour later, and that was it. So I always, in my head, I'm thinking garbled message, man. It almost sounds like it's coming from another realm, like he popped into this other dimension or something, That's pure speculation. Wow. But, his family, everyone believed he died chasing a UFO. Here's the plaque at his memorial saying, in loving memory of Gene.
Look at the date.
Disappeared intercepting a UFO,
October 21st.
So there you go, Romy. October 21st.
Just saying.
In a Scorpion jet. Yeah.
Oh, holy shit.
The same day that Lieutenant Monclov went down, about 12 hours later, on the opposite side of Lake Michigan, over in Wisconsin, his best friend was stationed in Wisconsin. And he used to be stationed in Wisconsin, so his wife still lives over there. His wife is neighbors with his best friend. So his wife is next door being consoled by his best friend's wife that she just lost her husband. When she too finds out her husband over in Wisconsin, totally separately, is out flying his Scorpion jet, and it instantaneously lost engine power and crashed. So, like, one of the biggest coincidences of all times, we have this guy chasing a UFO hundreds of miles away in Sault Ste. Marie who vanishes. And we have his best friend hundreds of miles away chasing nothing, supposedly. His plane just quits and goes down, but they never recover his body. So, really strange and fateful day, for the United States Air Force. But they never found Lieutenant Monclov, once again, just vanished like that last airplane.
So that the synchronicity on that is just baffling. It's insane. I mean, you can't.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, you two women lost that are not only friends, they're neighbors, and their husbands work in separate towns and are both pilots. It's almost like it's the same story, but it's almost twin symbolism or like some sort of pillar symbolism. Some like
they were commercial pilots, not military pilots.
No, they're both military pilots, but one was stationed in Madison, Wisconsin, and one was stationed in Kinross, Michigan.
Oh.
But the guy who was in Kinross, Michigan, used to be in Madison, Wisconsin, but he got transferred shortly before.
Right.
But his wife was still living in Wisconsin.
Like, that's a movie. There could be a full movie on that.
Still, absolutely. Right. And it gets deeper, too. We're really scratching the surface. That story gets real deep. There's a guy who thinks he's the reincarnated Felix Monclov, who tells this whole nother story of what actually happened to him. But that's a whole nother story.
Wow.
So there's a couple of plane disappearances, person disappearance. So now, if this is the Great Lakes, we look at a ship. And this is the story of the Admiral and the Klevko. And this is down in Lake Erie. So if you follow the Detroit River south, it flows into Lake Erie. And the Admiral was a tug, and the Klevko was a barge. So the Admiral was towing the barge, and they pulled into a snowstorm. And some of these snow squalls here in the Great Lakes can be super intense. You can't, it's like a wall of snow. And the story goes that the guys on the Klevko, they were a little concerned because they couldn't see the tugboat ahead of them anymore. They could see the tow line was tight, but they could no longer see the boat itself because the snow squall was so heavy. They thought everything was okay. until at one point they no longer had radio communication and realized the tow line that should be going straight forward was now going straight to the bottom of the lake.
Oh,
so
what
was a tow line now became an anchor. You know, so
wow.
Most likely they're assuming the tug sank and they're anchored to it, and now they're anchored there calling for rescue. So they called, the first person they called the coast cutter ICP. Here's actual pictures of the boat itself, the ICP. And, you know, they relay, we were being towed by the Admiral. We think the Admiral must have went down, but we think we're anchored here by it. We're in the, you know, just off of Cleveland a little bit. Come and get us. So ICP heads out into the squall, and the story goes, ICP at one point, they got close enough where they thought they caught a glimpse of it. They thought they caught a glimpse of the Cleve Co. But what they realized is they're chasing it. So the Cleve Co had broken loose. They don't know if somebody cut the rope or just broke loose. But now they're chasing the Cleve Co, basically. They catch sight of it. They still have radio communication. They say, hey, we got an eye on you. We're coming. All of a sudden, the snow squall intensifies. They lose visuals and they lose communications. At that same time, the ICP's engine room catches on fire. The Coast Guard cutter boat doing the searching, their engine room catches on fire. So now they have to turn around. They lost communication. They got to turn around. So the Coast Guard sends out a chopper. Same scenario. The chopper gets close. At one point, they get a visual. They say, we're coming for you. Same type thing. The squall intensifies. They lose visuals, lose communication, and the storm gets so bad that they end up having to call back in the Coast Guard cutter. That's the end of the story. The ships vanish. They never found them till 30 years later. So everybody who went out there to look for them, you know, they would get close. Supposedly they would see them. Never found them. The story goes, according to, you know, the best they can guess, is that these boats must have iced over in what they call an instant and sank, lost their buoyancy, and basically sank in an instant. Because they'll find these boats at the bottom of the lake in pristine condition, you know, in perfect condition. It's not like the barges are broken or there's holes punctured in them. So they think maybe they iced over and sank perfectly. But I just point out, man, the synchronicity or coincidences of those two boats, both icing over instantly, sinking separately, in conjunction with, you know, the search vessels getting there and having all kinds of their own problems, all losing communication, their engine rooms are catching on fire, you know, you name it, they had to call it off. And it's the same scenario with a lot of these ships around the Great Lakes. They find them like this. They're perfect, sitting at the bottom of the lakes. So is it possible they iced over and coincidentally it sank perfectly? You know, it's possible, but there could be something a lot stranger going on, you know, that I'm not sure what. But
when you look at a list of
being on the water,
when you look at a list of United States ships that are missing just within the border of the United States, the majority of them are in the Great Lakes. There's the SS Bannockburn that disappeared in Lake Superior, the SS Chicora that disappeared in Lake Michigan, the DM Clemson, which disappeared in Lake Superior, the SS Hippocampus in Benton Harbor, and then the SS Plymouth. The SS Plymouth, which disappeared in Green Bay. So yeah, that's you know, 6 out of the 7 listed here on the main page.
Yes, and that's just a couple of them. Say the Great Lakes Maritime Museum. I just went there 2 weeks ago, and they have a picture on the wall saying they believe there's at least 700 to 800 shipwrecks in the Great Lakes.
Whoa. And that's because
700 to 800.
is there a difference, like statistically, between a shipwreck and a disappearing ship? Like, would a shipwreck have to be found first to qualify as a shipwreck?
No, they're just going over. They go over the insurance logs. Is how they try to figure out exactly how many boats are
So if a
missing.
ship doesn't come back, it's technically wrecked.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly.
Good to
But
know.
yeah, there's. I mean, all those ones you just listed, Mark. Those are all rather mysterious ones,
Okay.
so to speak.
Okay.
But yeah,
So if we got a band of
rumors.
pirates to go out and salvage these ships while they're on the lakes, they technically never come back. The insurance company will just assume that they've been lost at sea, and then we can get an entire fleet of boats.
Oh my gosh, Roman!
I
I
love
think
it.
you.
No
I think
comment.
you just birthed a new theory, the breakaway civilization theory. That's where all these ships are disappearing to. They're getting stolen away by the breakaway civilization. Anyways, now here we are, Project Magnet. This is what Homie Romy alluded to earlier, and I felt a tingle in my spine when he said it earlier. So I'm like, oh, what's Project Magnet?
Got the magnet coil.
All right, yeah, Project Magnet. So with all these disappearances and monuments possibly marking magnetic anomalies, there should be no surprise that the governments here, Canada and America, have done magnetic studies for years. Project Magnet was a project Canada did. Actually, Canada was first to the draw with this, and it was in the early 50s, if I'm not mistaken. They started their Project Magnet, and what they did was just north of the Great Lakes in Ontario, they used all their previous communication antennas they already had set up and put some, I don't know exactly what kind of computer equipment they used, but they were looking for certain readings. And it only took them 1 to 2 years before, well, they came out and claimed they found electromagnetic signatures of UFOs in the area. And pretty much at that point, they publicly, supposedly, shut down the project. So there's been a couple books written about this, and a guy by the name of Wilbert Smith did a lot of research into it. And it supposedly goes a lot deeper, but the general gist is the government itself started a Project Magnet, claimed they witnessed magnetic anomalies from UFOs, and then shut down their project. Here you can see some of the newspaper clippings, Ottawa looking out for saucers, and that they were taking readings. The government itself was taking readings and talking about it. But like I said, it only lasted 2 years. But in America, they must have thought it was a good idea, because the same time Canada shut down their Project Magnet, the Navy was starting their Project Magnet. This is in the I think it was the late 50s, if I'm not mistaken. And they outfitted all these Navy planes, these ginormous equipment to read magnetic anomalies. And they started off flying around the Great Lakes and flying around America and eventually flying around the world. Oh yeah, we all need one of these. And they did this for 50 some odd years. They took these magnetic anomaly readings, and what they say they did with them is they say they made maps, for the aviation maps and the shipping maps. But I have a feeling they got a lot more detailed information than they're releasing on the aviation maps.
I wonder
for sure.
I wonder what that feels like when one of those planes passes over, because they're, we live sort of near New York City, so it's not uncommon for planes to just drone over the house. And when I was a kid, I would feel like a sense of what's that? But there were a few times where certain planes would fly over, and I would get this really unsettling feeling, kind of like the noise that Roman's making right now. And who knows, maybe it was a magnet plane like this. Giant magnet on the top.
Yeah, man, you think they're giving off something off that thing, man. Looking at the picture, you think it's giving off something.
Yeah.
So
It's like
they spent years and years and lots of money trying to figure out these magnetic anomalies. And
well, I mean, when you look up the ley lines and everything and all these connections to these ancient sacred sites, it's like they were looking for the magnetic anomalies in antiquity, and they found them through things like a stick in their hands. Now we have planes that can map out magnetic anomalies. Like, that's pretty significant.
Yeah, that's huge. Somebody somewhere has a very, very detailed map. Very detailed.
Damn.
And that was the Navy. They're searching out magnetic anomalies. NASA was also searching out magnetic anomalies. And in 2008, they revealed some of their findings. And NASA said that every 8 minutes, a magnetic portal opens between the sun and the earth. They literally said that a magnetic portal connects the sun to the earth every 8 minutes. They call it
8 minutes? Wow.
So every 8 minutes. Sometimes this portal can be as wide as the earth. Sometimes this portal can be very narrowed down. So I always wonder, we have all these people telling us about these magnetic portals, and now we got a magnetic portal coming from our sun, a star, maybe a stargate. Could these portals be hitting the earth in particular places, anomalies? And we got ancient people here on earth marking these anomalies, putting stone circles on them.
Yep.
We got planes flying over them, disappearing. Possible. It's totally possible.
Yeah. Absolutely.
At the right time that you're passing by oh, sorry, Tara. Please go.
Oh, that's all I said.
She's just adding to she's just agreeing. Go ahead, Roman.
And yeah.
Oh, nice. I also didn't hear what she said, so I did not hear in what she was in agreement with.
Oh, she said absolutely.
Oh, nice. Sometimes my ass is so loud that I can't hear. It's like, being like a bull in a china shop. Sometimes I'm trying to zen and thin a little bit, baby. You feel me? But yeah, I think if you're passing through these things at the right time, like if you can map out these portals, then these nonchalant existence. Like, what if the Stargate portals are only active at a very specific time and a very specific place? And if you knew the celestial clock, and you had that map, you could thus potentially dematerialize. Like, I don't know, that just seems like a stretch, but the consciousness, at least, I just thought they're watching this show called The OA, which kind of does this whole, I don't know if you guys have seen this show. It's The Stances, right?
Yeah.
Yes. I love that show. It's so good. I literally just finished it last night as my teeth were aching and I was in pain. I was just like,
I only saw a few episodes. But I only saw the dancing episodes.
Oh, word.
So I only saw a few, yeah.
Portals, time, interdimensional travel, through uses of like mirrors, magnets, and people's energy. You have to have a group of people to make this thing go down, or like a certain specific number. And I am rambling about some other shit. Please continue, Chad.
Oh man, I think you nailed it. It could be a specific time, could be a specific place, time in conjunction with frequency or time of the year. I think it's some combination of all of that, and that's kind of, I think, what we're on the path of figuring out. The more of these shows we do, maybe we'll start to figure out that pattern eventually, because there does seem to be a pattern there, So we looked at all the people disappearing, possible portals. Now we'll look at maybe some of the creatures protecting the portals. And this is the Michigan Dogman. That's the local name, one of the local names he's taken on. And brief personal stories. I didn't know anything about the Dogman when I moved up here from Stargate, Detroit to northern Michigan. But probably only a week or so after moving into my new house, I had a dream. And it was a spooky dream. I was standing on my deck at my house looking down towards my barn and noticed I left my barn door open. I was kind of looking in my barn door and seeing some red glowing eyes. Like, oh shit, what's that?
Whoa.
And all of a sudden, whatever it was came flying or lunging towards me, a couple 100 yards at me, and I woke up. Woke up all sweaty and weird. My wife's like, what's wrong with you? And I told her I had a werewolf dream, so I didn't know what the Dogman was. She kind of laughed at me, kind of laughed at my, it was spooky though. I didn't go up to my barn for a couple of days, anyway, a couple of days later, she comes home from work. She just got a job as a bartender at the local bar. All the locals hang out, and she's like, I heard some lumber guys talking about something they were calling the Michigan Dogman, and they wouldn't go back into the woods that day. They're arguing over which guy was going to go back to the site. And I kind of laughed, like, okay, I didn't know if she was pulling my leg or they were pulling her leg. But I went online and searched Michigan Dogman, and this thing popped up, and it was identical to what I had seen in my dream a couple of nights before. So I did a little more researching and come to find out this thing's even more local. I won't tell you my street name, but locally around here, it's called the Meridian Marker. And I happen to live off Meridian. Just me and one other house that's abandoned are off Meridian, and up here, it's known as the Meridian Marker. It's supposed to roam the state forest around my house. So, that kind of creeped me out. And that being said, even my wife came home one other time saying, I heard electrical workers telling the same story. They won't go in the woods. They're afraid of the Dogman. So, we, over the years, we go out once in a while and kind of do our Dogman hunts and go through the swamps and stuff, but never seen anything. But I tell you what, the people up here, there's people that believe it. It's also a legend, and it's also a funny thing, but there are certain people who believe it. Now, it all started, this whole legend in Michigan, what a lot of people don't realize is the Dogman legend started or reignited in 1987. And hardly anybody knew who the Dogman was before 1987. In 1987, a local Traverse City, where I live, radio DJ, wrote a song called The Legend. And he went back through ancient sightings for the last 100 years, and he wrote this song called The Legend, the Michigan Dogman, and this song became a hit. Like every Halloween, up to right now, every Halloween, it's the #1 requested song, The Legend. And the song actually goes through different sightings, and that's what reignited this whole Dogman phenomenon. And if you've ever heard the whole story of
wow.
He reappears on the 7th year of every decade, that comes from the song The Legend. The song's done by, his name is Steve Cook. And so that's where this all got reignited. But the song reignited it, but there are actual legends and actual, sightings for the last 100 years. There's Native American lore. There's a legend of a man of Bozo and his wolfman brother. His wolf brother, part man, part dogman, would protect the ancient burial mounds. So there are actual legitimate Native American legends that go along with the modern day legends. And, protecting burial mounds, kind of reminds me of Anubis, the Egyptian guardian of the dead. And here in America, we have the Dogman doing the same thing, according to legend. But nowadays, this is where he is nowadays. Nowadays, he's on T-shirts, and they have different. This is a bike race they have. This is called the Dogman Challenge, and it's a fat tire bike race they have every year. You can get some cool T-shirts and stickers, and they ride their fat bike tires through the Dogman, woods that he's supposed to occupy, so to speak.
Wow.
So,
I want to touch on the Egyptian lycanthrope connection, because it's there, it's real. Like in the town of Lycopolis, which was the dog worship town, Osiris was worshipped as the head of a wolf. And in some of the circles, his son Anubis as well. And then, so that is kind of an interesting crossover right there, with that. with that folklore and the doo-wah. And then also you have all this moon symbolism with the Dogman and, you know, that. But you also have the moon symbolism with magnetism. The moon magnetizes people. It's a magnet that, you know, sets our axis in the relationship between the sun and the moon, our paternal relationship. And so talking about these like kind of gateways, I think the moon has to play a lot in it when you talk about what timing needs for these things to happen. And I don't mean like only at night. I mean like specific times of the month, like right. For instance, full moons or new moons or things like that might play some sort of like, because if the Dogman's connected to magnetism and the crossing of voids into that, you know, that veil right there, as is all these other magnetic anomalies, and you're, you know, just able to shift your consciousness through these magnetic portals, do in accordance with celestial patterns. I mean, that makes sense to me. With all the weird shit we look into, like that's just clicking all the dots. I'm like, absolutely, that's how it works.
I'm with you, man. Makes sense to me. A Dogman connecting magnetic portal mounds. Why not, dude? Why not?
Chew!
So that's like kind of a brief rundown on one of our local.
Oh, I was just gonna say it's like the kind of like the gatekeeper, you know, like the Dogman and all the cryptids are like these blockers between realms, and sort of they guard the veil between worlds.
Man, absolutely. The Dogman, the guardian, the gatekeeper, 100%. I can go with that. Now, he's not our only cryptid, though. Up until 1987, when Steve Cook brought the Dogman into existence again, Bigfoot was the guy, you know, roaming around everywhere. Bigfoot is mainly seen in the Upper Peninsula. And Michigan's Upper Peninsula is very desolate, and there's been sightings and legends and for years up there. But kind of a funny thing has happened, though. The last 30 years, as the Dogman has become kind of, I'll call him the number one cryptid that people are talking about in Michigan, Bigfoot is kind of became, I call him the scapegoat cryptid. He gets blamed for everything. And he's became kind of this tourist attraction. I call him the cryptid klepto. And you'll see T-shirts saying, Bigfoot, he stole my beer. Or Bigfoot, he stole my beef jerky. Or Bigfoot stole my marijuana. And this is what's happened to Bigfoot here. And it also I'm guessing, I think it stems from a kernel of truth years ago. There used to be these sighting reports that Bigfoot would come and take picnic baskets or pets or farm animals. And once in a while,
was Yogi Bear actually a Bigfoot?
Maybe. And there's actually one story that used to go around,
that's sick.
And I can't tell you how true this story is, because it's kind of was underground on the down low before cannabis is open to be talked about it as it is now. But this was years ago, and the rumor was this guy in the Upper Peninsula got his crop ripped. And ripped means he got his crop stolen. And supposedly, you know, that guy's ground underneath his crop was all dirt. You don't want a bunch of weeds a lot of times, so people have just dirt. And what they found was these giant Bigfoot prints everywhere. No human prints, just Bigfoot prints. But what they think actually happened is that the rippers took the time to make these Bigfoot prints and strap them on so they wouldn't leave their actual shoe prints. But that was always kind of a legend. Was the Bigfoot really come and rip these guys?
Hilarious.
or was it some rippers? So I call this image the Great Lakes Ripper, just because it was a funny story I heard years ago.
Did you make this image?
Every day. Yeah, I made that image. Absolutely.
Dude, so you're telling
me...
me...
We should definitely make a t-shirt out of this one.
You're telling me that... Yes, agreed. You're telling me that the Sasquatch could be smoking weed? What do you think? You think he makes some kind of ancient pipe out of stone or something? It makes like a dugout out of the side of a hill and lights a bushfire? Like, how does Sasquatch smoke weed?
I don't know, man. The rumor,
yes.
Not the rumor, but the story went. Not only did they find the footprints, but only like select nugs were taken. It wasn't like they took the whole plant, but only like the top nugs or the top branches. Like he was actually selective on top of it.
Damn, that's either the most clever thief or a thief of an entire different kind who's equally clever.
Yeah. Yeah. Either way, it's a good story. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then say there's Ann Arbor. In Ann Arbor, they actually had a play called, Bigfoot Stole My Wife. So, that scenario.
Look at the dates.
Oh, man. There you go.
Yeah, wow, we got a heavy fall theme this episode. That's really interesting that a lot of people we've talked about seem to have been born or died in October, September, or November. This book was written in September or October, or the play was acted out. Wow, that's interesting.
Yeah, so that's our first two cryptids, our first two land cryptids. Land cryptid because the Dogman, land cryptid is the Bigfoot. Now we're going to talk about the sky and the water cryptids. And this is the Native American lore. And they include two cryptids, of course, the Thunderbird, which keeps coming up over and over again, as well as here in the Great Lakes, they have what's called the Water Panther. And symbolically, this is a cosmic battle between the Thunderbird and the Water Panther for the earthly realm. So the Water Panther in this region, his name is Anishi Pishu, and he's a guardian of the lakes, and in particular, he's a guardian of the copper. So up in Lake Superior in particular, he was supposed to be a guardian of Isle Royal, where all the missing copper took place. And the Native Americans, the legend goes, when they're in their canoes, they wouldn't even look in the direction of Isle Royal in the fear that Mishu Pishu would take them out with a swipe of his tail. And a swipe of his tail was supposed to create a vortex in the water. And of course, Mishu Pishu's archenemy, the Thunderbird, the guardian of the upper worlds. We talked many times about the Thunderbird and his connection to the portals. Here in Michigan, we actually have these rare relics, unlike any place else that were discovered. And these are called the Knob Cow Wind discs. And they look like coins, and they encompass this cosmic battle with Mishu Pishu as well as the Thunderbirds. And they also have some that have these, to me, it looks like a Stargate or a portal. But at first, the archaeologists, as they always do, claimed that these were forgeries. But years later, they were found on a college campus. So the college professor said, well, we'll go out to where they said they were discovered, and we'll set up an excavation site and see what we found. And, well, they found that these are legit. They found hundreds of these, and they're totally original. And yeah, and they call them shale coins. They don't really know what to call them, but
so they're kind of like runes.
Coins that were discovered buried. Yeah, they're very unique. Like this,
or wampum.
I've never seen it. Yeah, and it's depicting a cosmic battle. Wow. That's what we're talking about: the upper worlds, the lower worlds, the battle between.
Yeah.
So these are the cryptids that occupy that space.
Now,
do they correlate with
one last
go ahead.
They call this the Water Panther, but it looks kind of like a lynx in that one drawing you showed us. And lynx and bobcat, I believe, are one of the few felines in the whole world next to tigers that swim, right? Not a lot of cats swim, but panthers and tigers like to swim. Bobcats and lynx as well swim. House cats hate water.
Yeah.
I spray the cat with the
My
hose.
cat likes it.
But he doesn't like it. I just
good
do
point,
it.
Mark. Now, that's a good point, Mark, because sometimes he's called the water panther, sometimes he's called the water lynx. Depending how, if you can go over closer to Niagara Falls, he turns into the horned serpent. But it's really the same underworld, underwater being. He just changes a little from lake to lake, so to speak.
Wow.
All right, so one last thing I want to show you guys, because I'm hoping somebody in the audience can be of assistance here. And this is what I refer to as the Lake Superior underwater anomaly. Now, Lake Superior is the northernmost Great Lake, if you're not familiar with it. So we'll zoom in here. And in the northernmost Great Lake is an island called Isle Royal. And if you've heard of Michigan's copper mystery, this is the heart of the mystery. Over 500 million pounds of ancient copper has went missing from this island here. So while researching, that's a whole nother story. Great story. Whole nother story about where did the copper go. But while I was researching this island and the copper mystery, what I discovered was an anomaly off the northern shore. I'm not talking about a small anomaly. I'm talking about an underwater anomaly that's approximately 3 miles long by 2 miles wide or so. And this thing sits in about 500 feet of water, and it's very uniform, very uniform. And it's undocumented. I spent, I want to say, almost 10 years trying to figure out what this was before I brought this up to the attention of anyone. I did not want to put this out and somebody just, know what it was. And anyway, I spent a long time and been up to this island talking to the ship captains, talking to the scuba divers several times, and nobody's ever seen or heard of this anomaly. So over the years, I've been slowly putting out the possibilities and getting possibilities when I'd show the ship captains, the scuba divers, show everybody this anomaly. I've been to all the libraries up here, both sides. I've exhausted my resources, so that's why I'm asking for help. And one possibility is, could it be a meteorite impact? The time of the Younger Dryas, could a meteorite hit here, created this anomaly? And it's possible, but it's very uniform. Very, very uniform. The thickness of the walls along the entire top of it are the same thickness. The height of the walls are identical height, and the flat bottom is identical. So it's very uniform. So is it possible it's a meteorite impact? Maybe, but it seems like it should be documented. Another possibility is that
could it be an underwater mound site?
That's my next possibility, Tara.
I'm wondering what's the saltwater content of the lakes? Are they salty?
Nope,
Very salty?
they're 100% fresh. Nope, no salty.
All fresh. No salt content. Okay.
All
right.
fresh.
What's the tectonic activity around there?
Now,
Like, is it all one plate, or does it have any of own individual plates? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, that's a great question. That's exactly what I'm about to show you, Romy. Is right here. This was an ancient volcanic plate. Now we're talking millions of years ago. Now, the reason this area is so copper rich is because this is kind of hard to explain. But if my arms are the bedrock, at one point the bedrock collapsed, and where my elbows are, that came to the surface. And that is pure copper from miles below the surface. So that's where this pure copper, how it was able to get to the surface. But at one time it was a volcanic site. But as you see, images of ancient volcanoes underwater, they're usually not as uniform. And also the problem with that is Isle Royal here was gouged over the years from the ice sheets. As the ice sheets receded, it gouged away the island. If you look at the island, you can see it was just gouged away. So the same should be the case with this underwater anomalies. It should be gouged away, if it's any time previous to the Ice Age. So in my mind, it has to be 10,000 BC or the Younger Dryas or before, most likely. Because otherwise, that gouging of the ice sheets should have just destroyed it. But like Tara mentioned, could it be an ancient mound site? I mean, very similar. Ancient mounds have these walls. They usually have gateways leading into them. If you look closely, there's a gateway leading into this. The only problem with that is the largest mound site that we know of is in Ohio, the Great Circle. It's like maybe a half mile across or something. And this is 3 miles. So this is, dwarfs any mound that we've ever came across previous to this. But, looking at images, it's similar. And, talking about mound sites, this just came to mind, Mark and Tara, you're familiar with the Hammonescent line, going across different mound sites and different rock stone features. Oh, shoot, Mark's on it. All right.
Hey.
Well, that Hammonescent line pretty much points to this anomaly. So could it be connected? Or did somebody somehow, sometime, know this anomaly was here?
And this all started for Tara and I with the Hammonescent ley line. We'll get into that when we talk about our episode, our research for our area. But what's interesting about the Hammonescent ley line is just like many megalithic structures, it's actually showing the equinox through many different stone alignments that, like you just said, Chad, they all point to this area in the Great Lakes. But starting on Montauk, Long Island, and then going through Connecticut, upstate New York, and then to the area there, there's many different, not just stone structures, but mountains and significant locations, rivers, and so it's a very interesting alignment that we'll definitely expand on when Tara and I present our research on this area.
Awesome. So that was a great point, Tara. It could be an ancient mountain site that is now underwater, and there are a line pointing to it going across the country. Now another possibility.
Is there do you know what is that the history of what was there? Like, what maybe the foundation is made out of?
It's mostly, it's what they call, there's float copper, there's lots of igneous rock left over from the volcano, but the igneous pretty much pushed up all the float copper. There's silver, there's lots of granite, lots of quartz. So it's a super unusual bedrock. Like, if you look at this picture here, this Isle Royal, this bedrock that's reaching the surface, they say this is some of the oldest bedrock reaching the surface on planet Earth. So, this is extremely ancient. And I didn't point this out, but I'll point it out real quick. If you see this yellow line here, this is the Canadian-U.S. border. And it didn't used to always go like that. It used to cut across right here. So it didn't encompass Isle Royal. Well, Benjamin Franklin did a special treaty because he felt he needed to encapsulate this little corner. So Benjamin Franklin did a treaty, and when he did, he encapsulated this anomaly by literally feet, yards. He just got it in there. And is there any way Benjamin Franklin should have known he was getting that? I don't know.
The guy was obsessed with navigation.
Or he was, and they were obsessed with mounds. Awesome.
Yeah.
So I have somehow they know about that.
Wow.
I got the autobiography of Ben Franklin right here, written by the man himself. We'll just check it later and see what he says. What is it? Do you think it's a?
See what he says.
Do you think it's a potential of a caldera, like an ancient caldera?
It's possible. It's possible. The only problem with that is that I talked to a volcanic expert, and you see this indentation on the one side. Normally, a caldera will be round.
Yeah.
And if it is indented, the indentation will be because of a collapse. Well, here you can see there's no collapse. It's still. Yeah.
It looks like an old fortress of sorts.
It looks like a fortress. It looks like there's a gateway on the one side that you could come in and out of. You know? So one of my other possibilities was an ancient Atlantean, either fortress or mining operation. You know, Plato said the Atlanteans used orichalcum. It was their precious metal that they used in all their buildings. Orichalcum is made of copper. So, you know, we have billion pound of missing copper dating 8 to 10,000 years ago. Is it a possibility that it had some Atlantean connection? Here's a couple pieces of copper. Here you can see me. I'm sitting on the world's largest pieces of float copper. Here's another piece. But these are 100% pure pieces of copper.
Wow, that's huge.
I mean, you can see. Oh, they're gigantic, man. Gigantic. This one is 8,000 pounds or something. They found some that are 12,000.
And you got to think, like, mining these things, moving these around on, you know, supposed horse and buggy, you know, things like that. Like, but if you're using ancient tech to, you know, to move these pieces of copper, you know, which is a high conductor. So, I mean, like, absolutely. It's beautiful, man. It's this right here is a huge rabbit hole. The Great Lakes are insanely mysterious. I mean, they're anomalous in their own self because, you know, things like this or like what used to definitely be above ground at one point is now sunken. But why in that area? You know, like I don't know much about I know the tectonic plate movements of the West Coast in this area geographically and geologically, but I haven't looked into it over there. Because the West Coast, we deal with the North American plate, meeting with the Pacific plate, but over there you got the Atlantic plate, and I haven't done any studying on that, but there seems to be a lot more of these little like micro islands and stuff up towards, you know, like Ireland, Iceland, and up into Canada, and then right where it leads down here to America. So, and anyways, it's just a huge. This is a big one. Maybe this will be part 3 and 4. We dive deeper into the Great Lakes and the ancient copper and tectonics and the North Pole. Who knows?
It's a good point you make about the copper too being conductive. You know, we're talking about portals in this area, and here we have the most pure copper in the world everywhere. You know, if there's a place that portals could naturally be able to open, this could be it. And now we got this weird anomaly. Does somebody recognize that this place is it? I say that because one of my other possibilities, could it be a government underwater facility?
Oh,
that sounds kind of crazy. Sounds a little crazy here in the Great Lakes. But the reason I ever came up with this idea was because a story that a guy told me. Ancient American editor Wayne May, pretty good friend of mine. I was telling him a story about this anomaly. He's like, I got a story to tell you. He's like, one of my good friends was fishing this exact area off the north shore of Isle Royale. And as he was fishing, he swears a periscope popped up out of the water, turned towards his fishing vessel, and basically stared him down. He's like, it stared at me. It wouldn't go away. Eventually, he took off. And this is the Canadian border also, you know, this international border. He didn't know what to think. But he's like, whatever it was, it spooked him. He said, I'll never go fishing on the north shore of Isle Royale again.
Maybe Project
hear my
Magnet
story. I
was
speculate.
finding
Yeah.
places to put all these underwater bases.
Bam! Yeah, man. Why not? They got the map, so that's one of my possibilities. You know, it's a far out shot, but it's a possibility. And I also point out this possibility: could it be an underwater UFO base? Because we have all these UFO sightings. We had the Kinross Incident. All these UFO sightings over this exact area. You know, or could it be both? Could it be an underwater governmental UFO base that was one ancient mound site? You know, it could be all of them. You know, I honestly don't know. All I know is we have this anomaly that stands out like a sore thumb. And, you know,
well,
undocumented.
The significance of the Koricalcum too is really big. I mean, the fact that this is home and a hub to such a major copper deposit, and you have a bunch of different people talking about ancient cultures coming here and getting the copper from the Great Lakes area, and it's like, wow. You know, then you have this major production aspect. If there was like a huge mine, there's a big production happening. And then you look at what modern Detroit is known for. Well, the production of cars and automobiles for the entire American population. So it almost like plays out again in like its own modern sense. And, you know, I mean, I'm sure the oil mines would be rich up here too. I know Canada actually supplies us with a large amount of our oil from the Alberta oil sands up in northern Canada. Then after NAFTA, North American Free Trade Agreement, that we were able to get tax-free oil from them since 95 or whenever Clinton was in office. And so there's like that, like this area being just so rich in these minerals and having this high importance to the people who founded the country. Like, it's insane, man. Yeah,
agreed. And this one's a mystery. Like, this one's a mystery. So this is a mystery I encourage everybody to dig into. If somebody can help come up with some ideas, awesome. Because right now I'm stuck. Say the next thing to do is to, you know, expedition with the ship and sonars and all that good stuff. But right now, without it, you know, it's a mystery. So anyone has any ideas, I encourage them to reach out.
Let's start a GoFundMe to get enough funding so that we can get some solar tech and some stuff and get some diving and try to get as many people interested in it as possible. And then we can know. But maybe then we'll expose some crazy shit and might get popped. But, you know, it's all for fun. I'm down.
Make a heck of an episode. Us out there dodging the submarines and scuba diving.
Wow. I love it. This has been so cool. Chad, thank you, brother.
Thank you, guys. Of course.
What an awesome presentation.
That was good.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah. Grand
Whole
finale,
lot,
too.
whole lot.
It's amazing to see those huge pieces of copper. I wonder what kind of feeling those things emanate.
Dude, big feelings. I sat on that one big one you seen me on. I sat at that one holding my crystal skull for about an hour and a half, 2 hours straight, and it was 2 minutes. Like, wow. It was just like I was in this other world. It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's one of the feelings I have not had besides sitting there.
Right on.
Wow.
Well, this has been epic, brother. Thank you so much for putting this work in and giving us a 2-part, 4-hour dive into Detroit and Michigan and all the craziness that is going on there. Really awesome, occult, interesting, esoteric craziness, I should say. But wow. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing how the audience responds to this and seeing what we inspire in the people, you know, because I'm sure there's plenty of people out in Michigan and beyond that are going to love this episode.
please look into your town. Do it. You know you want to. We're good. We're getting somewhere. If we all band together and start looking all this stuff, we can answer some huge questions and be a part of history. Let's do it.
That was amazing.
Oh, wow. I knew you had that.
I agree.
I knew you had that up your sleeve.
Awesome, Romy.
I'm glad you waited till the end.
I know. I was holding back on the buttons. I was like, "Don't touch the buttons. Don't touch the buttons." You can't be left alone, man. Sometimes it's dangerous.
Very cool.
Yeah, I agree with Romy. I think to inspire other people to go out into their own backyard. That's what this is all about. And I apologize for pounding on the table, but that's because of how good it makes me feel and how excited I get. And you can have that feeling too. You can have it. Go out in your backyard, and when you see that world in a new light, you'll be pounding on tables too.
Hey.
Yes.
Love it.
Yes, I love it too. If Roman was standing at a table, he would pound his. There he goes. I love it. This is this is inspirational, and I wanted to get you on as a guest, Chad, because I feel like, today this was like a master course. William Henry, of course, gave us a sort of very professional master look at Nashville, but in a shorter amount of time. Today we're able to expand on a bunch of different areas, and for the listeners out there who are excited to have their opportunity as a guest on this show, any 2-3 of the 8 to 9 different genres of amazing stuff Chad fit into this presentation are welcome on the show. We don't expect you guys to put in as much effort, although we would appreciate it, but keep in mind, Chad's been working on this for, several years now, studying this stuff. So don't let this overwhelm you, but definitely let this be an inspiration and sort of a guide of like what you can look for when you're examining wherever it is you live. Maybe you live on the other side of the border there in Canada, and you want to tell us about the Canadian side of all the things that we just talked about. Hit us up. We're welcome to do
Tell
that.
us about that poutine.
Yeah, Esoteric America includes everyone in North and South America. So Canadians, Mexicans, and everyone south of Mexico, you're all welcome. And the Caribbean too. Why not? Let's just include it all. Alaska, and then everywhere in between here in Hawaii. And I think we'll keep it. That'll give us a whole lifetime of podcasting if we can stick to that area.
It's a lot. Alaska's a big one, man. I was looking. I kind of got swept away by. I had a couple synchronicities the other day. I woke up in the morning and I felt inclined to Alaska. And
dude,
yesterday, I don't know what's going on?
Yesterday, Tara and I were behind a car with all these Alaska bumper stickers, and it was like the mountains are calling you, and we just kept hitting this going to this car every stop sign. We'd be behind this car, and we were like, "Whoa, okay."
Trip out, dude. So this one morning, like last week, I was like, what's up with Alaska and all of its harp associations, and it's close to get the Aurora Borealis and all this stuff. Then I started thinking about all of the Greek god names that the towns are named after. It's just a pantheon of Greek gods for the names of the town. And so I was tripping out on it, and I started looking into it, and I was like, oh my God, there's a lot of gateway symbolism here with the rainbow bridges and connections to that and being close to the North Pole. Then later I go into town, right? And I'm just filling up gas, and I'm just sitting there, and I see the U-Haul pass by, and I was just like, look, and it's just Alaska, and I was like, crazy. And then I go and I pay for something, and I get a quarter back, and I was like, I'm gonna look at this quarter, and I wonder if it's gonna be Alaska. And it was an Alaska quarter. I shit you not. And there was one other fucking strange synchronicity that day too, and I was just like, damn, Alaska goes hard. I was like, we gotta try to find somebody who lives there to try to give us some more scoop, because it's cool. Anyways, I'm done ranting, dude.
No. Your rant gave me enough time to finalize this thought. I'm looking up at my Nat Geo top of the world map, and Michigan, to keep it on track with what we're talking about, and Alaska have a sort of fractal similarity. Like if you look
Whoa.
at Michigan and Alaska, they're like almost the same shape. You know, kind of like that glove shape. Like Alaska's kind of like an oven mitt glove, but just like oriented more on the side and maybe like a little wider and obviously much larger. But yeah, it's interesting. Like if you kind of trace a line between them, they're not like that far apart, and they kind of look like they're leaning towards each other, you know, like the two gloves, like big glove, little glove, you know. But
Man, okay, they got me thinking. I gotta look up.
well, we've been hitting it hard here. This is almost a 5-hour two-parter. We should probably wrap up and save me some time on the editing. And yeah, Tara, final thoughts? Anything you want to add before we wrap up?
I'm just excited to see it inspire people and grow and our episode coming out soon.
Yeah, we got to schedule that. We got to schedule you know, I got to say something, because Connecticut, we get a weird reputation. People have all this hate towards Connecticut. So I'm excited to be able to shed some light on the finer aspects of Connecticut and show how beautiful this state could be when you see it in the right light.
Yeah.
Well said.
Interesting.
So,
Okay.
well, right on. So, Roman, I feel like you're halfway down a different rabbit hole already. Maybe. Oh, here we go. He's sharing his screen.
So the North American plate apparently goes into the Atlantic Ocean, and over here it's right on the border. So that's where the Ring of Fire is, and then Alaska's right up here. So I'm like, and then there's this tiny little Strait of Juan de Fuca plate, but it doesn't say that Canada's on a different plate at all. But then this rift happens right here, where that's where Michigan is.
Have you ever heard of the Canadian Shield?
No.
So the Canadian Shield is a landmass of granite that is basically like, you know, it's this huge piece of solid rock that you know, kind of you know, stays in one place. But it is sort of, that's exactly at the bottom of the Great Lakes, or the top of the Great Lakes.
Oh. Shit, that's awesome.
So,
man, yeah, there's so much to look in there.
So if you're in the Canadian Shield, hit us up. We'd love to learn more. Maybe there's somebody listening who's like, yeah, you idiots, check this out. You know, that's the point of this show. Roman and I and Chad, you know, we're still learning. Chad obviously is an expert on his area, but, you know, we're all still learning here, and we would love to know what you folks know out there. So until next time, thank you for tuning in, and enjoy exploring wherever you are in our esoteric Americas.
Yeah.